Outside marine protected areas, snapper hardly tolerate divers. Effective hunting demands all of your skill and patience. To have success beyond sheer luck, you will have to change the way that you dive. Silently snooping over ledges, peering down into gullies and scrying through the kelp forest, in search of the kaitiaki, in search of the most wary fish in all of Aotearoa. Tamuri are a favourite target species for spear fishermen and line fishermen. Typically, it is kill on sight policy. Good opportunities while underwater are rare and seldom passed up. But what happens when you stop shooting the snapper? The diving here can be incredibly challenging, with very few fish around some days, but also incredibly rewarding. In the time that I've spent diving out here, I've noticed some seasonal patterns. Coming out of winter and into the warmer months, we get snapper moving into the shallows. This was the first one they had seen in quite a while. A decent fish. I line up on it, I think about it, but then I think again. At the time, I didn't really understand the significance of this moment, because I was more focused on trying to hunt Trevally. Trevally are my favourite species to target. Incredibly cunning fish, incredibly tasty, and they do not make it easy. My position here is not great, I'm sticking out a bit too far, and I just can't quite move my gun on these fish. To my surprise, the snapper from earlier is sticking around, following me at the surface. At this point, I could have easily plugged him. A legal fish, I could have shot him down from the surface through the head and called it a day there. After a breathe up on the surface with my new friend, I'm back off down to the bottom, heading to the front of the sledge, where I've got a school of porori. Trevally are a fish that often associate with other fish, such as kawai or porori as we have here. You'll get glimpses of Trevally out in between the porori. They're more silvery in coloration, with sharper pointed tails and a more angular body. When there's a big school of fish like this, it may seem like a great opportunity, but it can actually make things really difficult. There's about 100 pairs of eyes on you, and doing any subtle movements is impossible. Trevally, like snapper, are a fish that if you scare them, they are not going to stick around. So after a couple dives on them, not being successful, they were out of there. Diving on the North Shore, there is often a lot of pollution, especially fishing lines. It's an easy opportunity to give back. Doing stuff like this ensures that we can enjoy the ocean forever. We take a lot from the ocean, but we gotta give something back. It's not long until I'm back again. Having seen some nice fish here recently, I'm excited to get another opportunity at these Trevally. Dusting and grunting, trying to bring the fish in, laying as low as possible, but still not quite having enough. Throwing a Kina down over the sledge, I take a dive to see what might come in. Today the water is warmer, the current is pushing better, and from the surface I see not one but multiple snapper. Three beautiful snappers come in for the Kina, one of which being the snapper they had seen the previous dive, easily identified by its small injury to the tail. These fish were incredibly curious, and all legal shootable fish. But I had other things in mind. I had the Trevally in mind, but I had something else in mind as well. If I can befriend these fish, would that give me a better opportunity at shooting the Trevally? If I leave these fish to go about their day, or interact with them in a positive manner, is that going to make other fish more curious to come in? Other fish that are more interested in shooting? Snapper have a vital role in New Zealand's marine ecosystem, functioning as a keystone species. They are important in regulating the amount of Kina. Kina feed on kelp, and they're a healthy part of our marine environment, but they can get overpopulated in the absence of predators such as snapper. Having snapper at a healthy level ensures that our reefs remain healthy. One of the biggest problems that we're running into here in New Zealand is the increasing prevalence of Kina barrens. Areas in which the Kina have populated to such a high level that they've ended up eating all of the kelp on the reef and there's nothing left. These areas are ecological dead zones and have very little biodiversity. This happens as a result of overfishing snapper and other predators. It's not rocket science, it's just basic ecology. If my local reefs here on the North Shore became Kina barrens, I would be heartbroken. Headed down to the bottom, I meet my friend from the very beginning, old mate Snapper. I'm in search of Trevally once again, scouring out over the kelp. I see some shadows emerging, and it's the right shape. Those are Trevally, and they're nice ones. My friend comes in again, giving the Trevally confidence to move in closer. They know Snapper better than I do, and they must know Snapper are wary. If the Snappers chill with me, maybe they can be a bit chill as well. At this point, my eyes are just on the Trevally, but I like to think that my Snapper friend was just behind me, trying to coax him in as well. Some people have hunting dogs for pigs, but fuck it, we got hunting snapper for Trevally. Prior to shooting the Trevally, I would have considered us friends, but at this point, we're probably more like friends with benefits. I was already starting to experience some pretty special behaviour from the snapper. It's scenes like this that could keep you in the water for hours and hours, if it weren't for the sun going down and getting very cold. Typically, by the time it starts getting very dark, or I can't feel my hands and feet anymore, I'm headed back in. After that dive, I was amped to get back out there again. However, the ocean does its own thing, and the weather is still incredibly hard to predict. It was a while before conditions got good enough to head back out there again. But when they were good enough, absolutely beautiful. Typically on the North Shore, you are not going to see viz like this. This is a rarity, this is a gem of a day. Visibility is always an interesting topic to talk about, because good viz for someone might be terrible viz for someone else. So always be grateful for what you have, even though it's not the greatest viz. I was absolutely stoked to be out here. Once I found my friend Snapper that had been acclimatized in the past couple dives, I line up and take the shot. Just joking, of course not. This fish was starting to really like me. I could hang out on the bottom, look around, see the fish would come in, and it would be a great time. And this is the exact same fish from the start of the video. You can tell by the injury on its tail. When I was finished with my dives, I'd go to the surface, and hanging out with me at the surface would be my friend the Snapper. I could go down, try and take videos of other fish, trying to get some more action, but my friend the Snapper would still sneak in there anyway. Maybe this fish just wants something from me. Maybe it just sees me as a feeding opportunity. Maybe it just thinks I'm going to shoot another fish and feed it as gills again, or break open a Kina and feed it. But I think there's something more to it. Out on some of the deepest sections of reef, I'm able to meet some of my friend Snapper's friends. More snapper of around a similar size, but all these fish are acting unusually curious. I think it's due to the presence of my friend here. If they see that we're mates and he will come in close, or she, I'm not 100% sure, then the other fish can be chill as well. The fish are constantly analysing each other and you. If it's all good vibes, the fish aren't going to be afraid. But if the other snapper are freaking out, don't want to get close to you, acting super wary, then the other fish aren't going to come in. As we touched on previously, Kina are a favourite food of snapper. You can break them open to attract snapper, but how often do you get to do this? Hand feeding snapper. Unreal. The most wary fish in New Zealand, and you've got it right there eating out of your hands. Other fish lining up to have a crack at it. This is exceptional behaviour, and I have seen nothing like this in all my years of diving outside of marine reservations. This is incredible. This is what makes it all worth it. We go out there so we can see things like this. But usually when we do, we're focused on killing it. We're focused on trying to get something for ourselves, or to prove ourselves, to shoot the biggest snapper, to get the most Instagram likes. But there's another way. We don't have to kill them. In fact, when you don't kill them, it's even better. Like, this moment here is so much more special than if I'd shot one of these through the head, dragged it up, and never seen the rest of these fish ever again. We need to think about the long term and what we're really trying to get out of the ocean, because we shouldn't just be trying to get fish. That's not what it's about. The fish are a bonus, but what we really get from the ocean is a connection to nature that you just can't find many places anymore. So don't destroy that connection by killing things. That's a part of who you are as a person, a hunter. But there's a time and a place, and it's not always the right move to kill everything that you can. Once again, it was a while until I could make it back to the spot. It's always a relief to see my friend is still around. I often fear that if another diver dove into the area, my snapper would make an easy meal. Snapper are possibly the most difficult fish to hunt effectively in all of New Zealand, typically requiring elements of stealth, patience and persistence that are not required to catch most other fish. The majority of my early experiences with snapper involved coming across fish parked up in areas, and within seconds spooking them off and never seeing them again. Sussing my first snappers was a journey steeped in frustrations and disappointments. Often there will be snapper around, however getting a shaft into one is a different matter entirely. Most spear fishermen in New Zealand have sob stories and tales of the one that got away, myself included. These fish are not easy. But why? From a biological perspective, snapper are incredible. They have amazing hearing, vision, and a keen sense of smell. Though perhaps this does not explain all of the behaviour that we observe. Snapper have been a primary target species for as long as people have been inhabiting the beautiful land of Aotearoa. Hunting snapper over an extended time frame has possibly made them more wary. Friendly, curious snappers ending on the plate many moons ago. Perhaps there are anthropogenic selection pressures working in favour of skeptical snappers. More cautious fish are more likely to reproduce and pass on their Fritz characteristics to the offspring, whilst less cautious fish become dinner and are removed from the gene pool. I think that the way that we act towards these fish has moulded them into a highly alert, highly vigilant and skittish fish, within the lifetime of each snapper, but also across generations. If you went diving around New Zealand 1,000 years ago, I do not think that the snapper would be nearly as vigilant and wary of people as they are nowadays. In protected areas like Goat Island, Cathedral Cove and the Poor Knights, snapper will often seek out divers, accompanying them and being very inquisitive. But why? How do they know we can't catch them in these areas? Well, they don't. This is a clear example of how our behaviour influences the behaviour of fish. The eyes are the window to the soul, and fish are experts at deciphering your true intentions. In marine reserves, we can shift our mindset easily away from hunting and instead focusing on simply enjoying the experience. The life of a fish is very tense, predators often not far away. Being able to distinguish between threat, food, predator and prey is paramount to their survival. Fish are constantly making judgments regarding if they are potentially in danger. In murky water, large predators like tuna, sharks and dolphins can close the gap in a split second. Fish know the gaze of a predator. Do they see it in you? If you can change your outlook on diving from predation to observation, the fish pick up on it. People sometimes ask me where to go spearfishing. I'm generally keen to answer questions, but this is a sensitive topic for the areas I dive frequently, because they are so close to Auckland, our largest city. The spots are easily accessible, and if everybody knew where the fish were, there probably wouldn't be any left. Put in the work, dive everywhere, swim far and pay attention. the spots you really want are not the ones people easily give up. Get your fins on, go to the ocean, cover ground, and you'll be surprised at what can be found. All my spots I found myself. Hours and hours of swimming along the coast. All tides, all conditions, finding out what works and what doesn't. Scouring satellite imagery, aerial photography, and bathymetric charts. Close to 100 dives shooting nothing. No fish, no viz, no chance. But that's what it takes to really understand the areas that you dive. There are no shortcuts to this knowledge. You can beg for spots and you might get them, but it does little for your overall understanding. Besides, it is so much more satisfying finding your own spots. Enjoy the journey. 10 garbage dives makes it all the more rewarding when you find what you are looking for. This particular spot has produced some great fish for me over the years, most notably kingfish and trevally. I found this area one day while doing a huge swim back in 2020. Since then, it has been a personal favourite. This place is so special to me, and I will protect it. If you want to know where this is, I'm not telling you. Nothing personal. It's just some things are so fragile, it's best to keep them to yourself. If you try and triangulate the location of this video from the brief above water shots that have been cropped and or flipped to obscure locations, go grab your fins, jump in the water, start swimming, and find your own spots, Brev. When repeatedly diving the same spot, I've often wondered to myself, is this the same eagle ray? Are these the fish that were here last time? Is that the same shark I seen before? But never in my diving, up until now, have I been able to go to a place and consistently run into what I know is the same fish. I can tell this is my fish because of the way that it acts and the way that it looks. But I definitely don't think that anybody would experience this same behaviour from the snapper just heading out there. I think that the snapper recognises me and behaves accordingly. Fish are a lot smarter than we give them credit for, and this one seems to recognise exactly who I am even when we haven't seen each other in weeks. From an early age, they try and convince us that nature is stupid. Fish in particular, dumb as rocks. It helps justify the killing that we are doing in the oceans and the destruction that takes place. You are taught from an early age that a goldfish has a memory of 5 seconds, which simply isn't true, and helps perpetuate the narrative which justifies destruction. Just because we don't understand something does not mean it's stupid. Just because it can't communicate with you in words doesn't mean it's stupid. And just because you think it's stupid doesn't mean it can't feel pain. If we view the ocean as a hostile, unforgiving void, full of stupid creatures, then exploitation is inevitable. But stick your head below the water and what you will find is quite the opposite. Underwater, there are creatures from all walks of life, incredibly sensitive, intelligent organisms. Much of the destruction that happens out here on the ocean, we don't feel it. But just know, it is felt. After feeding my snapper friend, I was on the hunt for another Kina, coming across this nice red monkey here. Which is when something really cool happened. As I was making my way up to the surface, I had a look behind me, and to my absolute delight, there was a lovely kingfish. This is the moment I had been hoping for, basically the entire time doing this little snapper social experiment. The initial goal of this project was to acclimatise the snapper so the kingfish could come in and feel more comfortable with me. And the moment transpired here. I was looking for the Kina, snapper around, the kingfish came in, the kingfish was really curious, comes, does a couple passes, and I don't have my spear gun on me. It's not far, but I'm not swimming over to it, I'm just enjoying the moment. Checking out this beautiful fish and enjoying the ocean with my friends. I know now that I'm going to get more opportunities like this. I'm in no rush, and we shouldn't be in a rush. As the water gets even warmer, we start to get jellyfish riding warm ocean currents into the Gulf. This is a lion's mane jellyfish. It can grow to be one of the biggest jellyfish in the world. However, the ones we find around here are typically less than about a meter across the top. I found my first one of the season coming up from a dive and I hit my head on it. I was showing a preview of this video to my mate Cade. We've done quite a lot of diving in Coromandel together, and he's even been in a couple of videos. He has provided all the music that I'm using in this video, and I'm really appreciative for that. But he had a very obvious question when he was watching. What is all that stuff in the water? Once you do enough diving in Auckland, you learn to accept the silt, and just become a part of it really. All these suspended bits of particulates in the water is what we refer to as silt. The main cause of silt is runoff from the land. This can be farming areas, residential areas, industrial areas, cities, suburbs, anything that could be depositing basically small debris into the water, which is then suspended in the water. Sediment running off from the land is a natural process. However, in ecologically intact areas, there are ecosystems that have adapted to be able to slow this process and prevent excess levels of silt ending up in the water. Things like mangroves, estuarine ecosystems, marshes, all that sort of stuff can help protect the water quality. Personally, I don't think silt is very pretty to look at, and it definitely has a huge part to play in why the visibility is so bad in the inner Hauraki Gulf. But the problems with silt come down to more than just the aesthetics of it. Silt, while is often suspended in the water, when currents settle down, it can settle on the tops of rocks, on the tops of kelp, and benthic species that live on rocks, suffocating them. Think about kelp. Kelp has to photosynthesize. It needs to have its leaves exposed to sunlight in order to be able to feed itself and the rest of the ecosystem around it. If there is too much silt, it can cover all the fronds on the kelp and it can no longer photosynthesize, causing the kelp to die. In the inner Hauraki Gulf here, it is so sheltered, which makes it an ideal place for boating. However, that shelter can be at the detriment of kelp when there is so much silt in the water, because this sediment will settle on the kelp and it can be days until it's moved off by enough swell. Having a healthy amount of swell activity can stop the settlement of silt onto kelp. However, here where it's so sheltered, we've had real issues with sediment. By now, the snapper was comfortable enough to eat out of my hand at the surface, in broad daylight no less. Something that I've observed about fish is they don't like to be up in the real shallow water when it's bright lights, where they're easily visible from the surface. They can get more wary. However, the snapper didn't seem to mind, even with the bottom being relatively far away. Getting snapper to come up into the upper water column, generally you have to be over shallower ground, where the snapper have an easier escape and feel more comfortable, as opposed to being right up in the mid-water, in broad daylight, easily visible. Pretty unusual behaviour. Kina are a species of sea urchin that are native to New Zealand and found all throughout the country, providing an abundant source of food for many creatures. However, in recent years, they have gained infamy for another reason. In many places, there were once thriving reefs. Now, barred rock is observed, covered in nothing but kina, where kina have become so abundant that they have eaten all their food and left the reef barren. These areas are hence referred to as kina barrens. So the easiest assumption to make is that the kina are bad. But just consider the fact that nature generally exists in perfect harmony before we get involved. Why would this creature that has been here longer than we have now suddenly be destroying reefs? It doesn't make sense. So let's think deeper about it. Kina have two main predators, snapper and crayfish, both of which are favourite recreational and commercial species. We'll have a quick look at some graphs to see if we can get an understanding for how snapper populations are doing overall. This first chart that we're going to be looking at is courtesy of the New Zealand Fisheries Info site, showing commercial catch rates of snapper in the SNA1 area east of Auckland. Just one section of the country, keep that in mind. The straight horizontal line at the top of the graph represents the total allowable commercial catch, which is the maximum amount they can catch each year. You can see every year they've done pretty well to catch that amount. However, looking at the scale on the left is confusing because there is no scale, and you have to look elsewhere on the page to find the scale, same as all these graphs. And when you find the scale, it's pretty disgusting. All amounts are in thousands of kilograms. 4,000 what? 4,000 kilograms of snapper each year. This next chart is courtesy of the Ministry of Primary Industries here in New Zealand, showing snapper population abundance compared to what it probably would be if we didn't fish them. In eastern Northland for the past 3 decades, snapper populations have been less than a quarter of what they would be unfished. In the Hauraki Gulf, Bay of Plenty, don't be fooled by the upward trend in the graph, it is not looking good, with snapper populations likely at around 20% of their unfished level. So, overall, the amount of snapper that we have now is nowhere near what it used to be. Same can be said for crayfish, and I could go on to show you more graphs, but honestly, I think you get the picture and it's sad enough. The combined absence of multiple predators has led to a population explosion of Kina in certain areas, leading to the Kina barrens. The Kina are not at fault here, they're just doing what they do. With that said, I think there are other factors at play. The distribution and abundance of Kina is not just due to predatory species. Here on the North Shore, there is a considerable lack of such. There's not usually a lot of snappers, and there's very few crayfish. However, the sea urchin populations here seem to remain stable, and the reefs remain healthy and covered in kelp. I think there's definitely more to the big story than your first assumptions. Quick yarn about fishing. For a while I tried to get myself into fishing, as a way to supplement spearfishing when the weather wasn't quite as nice. However, I soon found fishing to be an incredibly destructive, often wasteful, and environmentally unconscious pursuit. So one of the biggest problems with fishing is loss of gear, particularly lines, lures, sinkers, things like that. And it's not uncommon. Imagine you're fishing this area, all it takes is one snag on your sinker or your hook, and you're cutting your line and tying a new one. And you might not think much of it, but it's when you go underwater and you see the actual impact of this discarded line, it can be quite incredible. I've seen videos of animals caught up on this line. Fortunate not to have seen it myself. However, there's some places you'll go where it'll be absolutely everywhere. I try my best to remove it when I see it, but often it can be there for quite a while before it's found. As seen here, it can get tangled up in the kelp, resulting in pulling seaweed when I try and remove it. This could be avoidable by going down and spending an enormous amount of time unwrapping the line around each single frond of vegetation. However, as well as being time consuming, it's quite dangerous. When you're dealing with multiple lines as I am here, you want to be at the surface the entire time, so you're not going to get snagged up at the bottom. Always be mindful and put your safety first. Not to say that I haven't had good times fishing. I had some awesome nights down at the Tyrrell Wharf catching kahawai on little lures. Great fun. However, the amount of gear that I lost and fish that I probably injured as a result is not justifiable. At least with spearfishing, you can be really selective, and the chance of losing gear is very slim, as opposed to fishing, where it's to be expected. You bring extra lures because you're going to lose them. You don't bring an extra spear gun because you're going to lose it. At least I don't. After dealing with that trash, make it out to the spot, and sure enough, my friend is here. As always. For months now, I've been coming out to the same spot, and every single time, without fail, I see my friend. I think I'm going to call the snapper hope, because that's what it gives me. It gives me hope for a future. A future in which we can reunite with nature, as opposed to being at opposite ends of the spectrum, predator and prey. We need to be more integrated in the way that we deal with the natural world, and realize that our place in it has a lot more nuance. We're here as protectors, kaitiakis, to keep the balance, or restore it. We have incredible power over this world, but what do we choose to do with it? What will we choose to do with it? What should we do with it? That is the question. But I don't think it's hard to look for improvements that we can make in the way that we deal with the natural world. We are facing a serious problem here in New Zealand. We are losing our favourite fish. It is being eaten to death, not just by us, but by the entire world. Most snapper caught in New Zealand are exported. People all over the planet get to enjoy our kai moana, and the people making the decisions and responsible for all the killing are the ones profiting, while it's us that have to deal with the consequences. Our marine environment will change forever if things continue this way. Kina barrens will increase in size and frequency. You can wave goodbye to your favourite reef, because at this rate, it's not going to be there much longer. If we destroy all of the crayfish and all of the snapper and let our reefs fall into ruin, we lose our way of life as New Zealanders. A way of life interconnected with the ocean and the natural environment. One that will be squandered if we let corporate greed and ego take over our planet, or stay in control, depending how you look at it. If you live and dive here in New Zealand, I urge you to care, and I beg you to change your ways. I know most of us love shooting snapper. We go after the biggest ones that we can. That's the real trophy for most of us. That's what we want. When you first start spearfishing in New Zealand, you're thinking, damn, when am I going to get my first 20 pounder? When am I going to shoot my first big snapper? People are obsessed with it here, there's no exaggeration. But what is the toll? The toll is us destroying our country and our way of life, eventually if things continue. So now is the time to change. Get upset, get angry, but don't lose hope. Environmentally speaking, things have never looked worse. This planet needs you. Why do you think you're here? To pay taxes? To scroll Instagram reels? To play video games? What if I told you it was none of that? Look after your friends and family. Most people don't care, but some people truly do. Look after yourself. Sometimes you're the only person that you can rely on. And look after the planet, because this is all we have. Thank you for taking time out of your day to watch my video. I don't expect you to never catch a snapper again. I just want you to think about it a little bit more. Thank you very much.